to a session on our Facebook page. Thank you so much for being here. If you are watching this on our YouTube channel, we encourage you to find us on our Facebook group, Pass the Real Estate Exam. If you're watching this on the Pass Real Estate Exam Facebook group and you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Brenda Kasuva. On Facebook, we go by under Pass the Real Estate Exam. Thank you for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Brenda Kasuva. I am the administrator for the Facebook group Pass the Real Estate Exam. This is my contact information that is helpful for the person who's working to pass their real estate exam, no matter where you are. When it comes to state law, I specialize on the Maryland state laws. And beyond you passing your real estate exam, I teach a lot of continuing education and technology tool and strategies to grow your business. On Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere, social media, I go by Brenda Kasuva or the hashtag Training with Brenda. Our telephone number is there, email address, and website, Brenda Kasuva or Training with Brenda, where you're able to get a list of everything that we have going on. Today's topic is going to be on title versus deed. Title versus deed. You've probably heard the word title, which is a word that you've heard for those of you who probably own a car and you have that piece of paper that is telling you you bought this car from the dealer or you bought this car from Brenda, and you keep it in a safe place. And then when you're disposing of the property or transferring it to someone else, then you're going to sign it, and that person is then going to take that piece of paper title for car purposes and go and register it with Department of Motor Vehicles or Motor Vehicles Administration, depending on the state you're in and what it's referenced to. So that's what we understand, majority of us, in terms of title. Well, in real estate, it's a little bit different. Title is something that you cannot touch. Title is rights or ownership that you have. What rights do you have in this particular property? That's title. Deed is the piece of paper that I'm going to use to transfer property from one individual or one entity to another. So in real estate, they're kind of separated. Title is the rights, something that is not tangible. And then deed is a piece of paper that has been used to transfer property from one individual to another, and then it goes on so forth to the next person. So think of deed as the piece of paper. Title, ownership, rights. So when I say ownership or rights, I'm meaning title on the real estate side. Hopefully that helps you in terms of the first definition. I'll be echoing or reviewing that throughout the session. The next thing we're going to talk about is elements of a deed and types of a deed. There are two testing facilities in the country. We have PSI Testing Company, and then the other one is Pearson VUE. When it comes to PSI, this is the breakdown of this particular topic. You have transfer of title. This is one part of the exam. And then the other part is going to be the one that talks about deeds. So Brenda today is going to focus on letter B, number 2, and number 3. All the others will be reviewed at a later time. So go ahead and subscribe for you to be able to get notified when we upload our videos. And for any title representatives or anyone that has feedback in terms of how else you explain this content, I welcome your feedback in the comments. The other testing facilities, forms of ownership, transfer, recording of title, which is found under Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE, again, the content is going to be similar in terms of, it doesn't matter whether I'm taking the test in Texas, who uses Pearson VUE, or I am testing in Maryland, who are using PSI testing facility. Notice the content is kind of similar to where we have A is talking about ownership, estates, rights, and interest. So title is another word for the rights that you have, the interest that you have, or the ownership that you have. And then we have the other section, letter B, which goes into the deed. And again, Brenda here is covering letter B, number 1 and number 2 today. If you are not familiar or have access to the breakdown of your real estate exam, this is where I welcome you to look at the comments or to look at the description or go to YouTube. I have a video that walks you through on how to pull up the breakdown of your questions for your specific state, whether it's going to be Pearson VUE or it's going to be PSI. Go ahead and check out that video for you to have the breakdown of all the other questions. My other challenge out to you is that if you haven't scheduled for your real estate exam and you have the opportunity to do so, go ahead and do so right away, because as time goes by, this information just starts to disappear because you're not using it on a regular basis. Let's start with the ownership, because again, title is what? Ownership, the rights that you get when you own that particular property, and the interest. So ownership, rights, interest, and type ownership is going to be what we're going to be talking about. Let's start with this part. Estate in land is broken down into 2. What rights do you have? For how long and which way do you own the property is broken down into 2. Freehold and leasehold. Free, indefinite. That's kind of ongoing. Indefinitely, we don't have an expiration date. Leasehold, you're renting, it has an expiration date. And you see the 4 types of leaseholds. And then we have the 2 types of freehold. So estate in land, again, as a definition, is the degree of how you own the property, for how long and which way. How do you own the property? How much of it do you own? What rights limit you to using of the property, or what rights do you have in terms of how you use the property and for how long? So once we get into freehold and or life estate, this is where you're going to break it down a little bit further. And then we get into, then when you get the property transferred over to you, then how will you own it? Are you going to own it by yourself? Ownership and severalty. Are you going to own it with other people? And if it's other people, let's say it's 5 people, are you going to be joint tenants, or are you going to be tenants in common? And if you're married, if it's 2 people, then you own it tenants by the entirety. A whole topic that I will cover at a later time. How do you transfer property? Transfer of property or transfer of title, the rights that you have with that property, fee simple, or life estate could be transferred voluntarily or involuntarily. So voluntarily or voluntary is where you made the choice. How are you transferring the property? Choice, your choice. Are you selling it to someone? Are you giving it as a gift? Or have you indicated in your will how the property is going to be transferred? So that's all by choice. That's voluntary alienation. How is the property disposed of? The other way could be disposed of is not by choice, the opposite. Involuntary alienation, not by choice. This is where it could be you passed away, you didn't plan ahead with the will, and maybe you don't have any heirs. So it's going to go through a sheet. It might be taken from you by the government because they want to use it for other purposes to enhance the public, and that's going to be under eminent domain. You got a mortgage, you didn't pay, and therefore they have repossessed the property, foreclosure. So those are the ways in which the property could be transferred involuntarily, not by choice. Voluntarily, you decided to transfer the property by your own way. That could be reviewed at a later time. So let's review a couple of things. In terms of deeds and title, let's start with what is required in a deed. What is it that we require in a deed? And please remember that a deed is what? The deed is the piece of paper that is used to transfer property from one individual, from Brenda, and then Brenda is transferring her property voluntarily to, let's say, my brother Dennis. Or if my property is going to be taken by the bank, remember I have a lien, then they're going to use another types of deeds that we're going to go through. Either way, deed is a piece of paper that is used to transfer from one individual, one entity to another. So what is required to make sure that this is valid? We do need that the person who's given it, grantor, is of legal age and sound mind. The grantor is the one that's going to sign it. Grantor is the person that's going to sign it. Some of you replace grantor with the seller. For test purposes, probably remember the word grantor is a person granting it. And then we have who's getting it. We need to have specifics as to who's getting it. Brenda Kasuva is the seller. I sign it. I'm of legal age and sound mind. I am selling it to my friend, Brian Simpson. Then we need to know the person who is getting it. Grantee is a person getting it. Consideration, anything of value. Anything of value. Yes, to most of us, money is what we consider something of value, but it could be love and affection, or it could just be an understanding. We're going through a divorce, we're parting ways. He's keeping the house, consideration, that's fine. We've separated, I'm good with that. Consideration, anything of value. Granting clause ends up being, what are some of the things that you need to be aware of that come along with you owning this property? Remember, again, I'm transferring my rights. So what are you getting? Are you getting a fee simple determinable where there's certain restrictions that I need to follow? Am I getting a property that has a homeowners association? We're going to be told about that. Does it have any deed restrictions? Does it have any condo rules? This is where you're going to be told, what are you being given? What are you getting? And then habendum clause is where it defines ownership, where what are you getting? Who's getting the property? Maybe how they're getting it. And for those who might be in a state like mine in Maryland, this is where it would talk about, does it have surface rights like ground rent? So habendum clause is covered under the granting clause. This is where you're going to see specifics to that property and what are some of the things you need to be aware of. Legal description, this is a legal document, so we need to know the specifics of the property, not just the property address. Where does a property start? How far does it go? And where does it end? That's the legal description, where it's going to use the three methods, meets and bounds. We're going to use either the government survey or the lot and block. The final step is delivery of the deed and acceptance by the grantee. So we have the seller signing it, we have the buyer is accepting it, and this is delivery of the deed and acceptance by the grantee. So let's review. Grantor is the seller to most of you, the person giving. the person creating, the person granting the deed. OR is the giver, the person who's given it. So grantor, the person granting the deed, from mother to child, from father to daughter, so forth. The person granting the deed, the seller to the buyer. Must be legally competent, and they're the ones who sign it. Grantee is the buyer, the person receiving the deed. So during a divorce, he's getting it, that's the grantee. The grantee needs to be identified, meaning we need to specify who. So not just Brenda gave the property to her brother, it needs to identify my brother's full name. In review again, the grantor is the one that signs it. Seller is the one that must sign the deed. If the buyer signs it, that's fine, but the one that is required for it to be valid is the grantor's signature. The seller, the person giving, the person granting the property is the one that has to sign it. I think I missed this one on my bullet points, and it's good that I have it here, acknowledgement. When we are talking about the seller's signature, acknowledgement is key. What is acknowledgement? We are confirming that the seller's signature is legit, that this is truly the seller, and the seller is not under duress. For example, the seller knows what they're doing and the seller is okay with it. So acknowledgement is key. You have the seller signing it, and then we have acknowledgement. Well then, Brenda, what is acknowledgement? Most of you are going to plant the word it's notarized. This is where we have a notary who's checking the seller's identification and matching up the signatures to make sure that the seller knows what they're doing and that it is a legit signature and genuine. So that is acknowledgement. Seller signs it, it is acknowledged or notarized. So deeds are notarized. Acknowledgement is to confirm the signature. In review, the last step is delivery and acceptance, which is again, when the buyer has received the deed. Typically this is at closing or at settlement or closing of escrow, whatever word you use in your area. Delivery and acceptance is when now we have legal title. If I bring in the topic of contracts, this is now when we have an executed contract. Everything has been done, legal title has passed when the deed is delivered and accepted. Prior to that, the buyer had what? Equitable title. It's good to review these words again. So legal title is received when the deed is delivered and accepted by the grantee. Prior to that, if the contract has been accepted, we have what? Equitable title. Legal title is received when the deed has been delivered and accepted by the buyer. I mentioned I will echo this again. In review, a deed is the piece of paper that is used to transfer property from one individual to another. Title is the ownership, the interest, or the rights that you get to that property. So title is not tangible again. The deed is the document, the piece of paper that is used to transfer property from one individual to another. That leads us to this last part of the conversation. There are different types of deeds that we're going to review. These are the basic ones. There might be others. Make sure you go back and review the content in your textbook under the topic of title or deeds, depending on the publisher. Types of deeds. So we'll go through these 4. General warranty deed has 5 warranties. I'm going to plant the word promises instead of warranties. Special has 2 promises from the grantor or the seller. Bargain and sale has 1. Quit claim has nothing, no promises whatsoever. So let's go through each one and see whether my method is going to help you remember these. General warranty, 5. General warranty, 5 promises. The covenant of ceasing is I have the right to sell it to you. Encumbrances, as far as I know, this property is not encumbered in terms of liens and so forth. Further, quiet enjoyment, you will have the opportunity to, let's say, refinance in the future. Further assurance, anything that I can do to make sure that everything is okay in case of any hiccup, I'm going to provide that, and warranty forever. So 5 promises. 5 promises that you get in the general warranty deed. Here, I'm just going to remind you the 5. One way that I remind myself, or when I'm teaching this particular course, in terms of the little education that I've been given, is when I hear general, someone presented to me the military side, so a general. So if you look at the military side in terms of the word general, then a general that has a 5 stars is almost like the highest level, is what I'm educated. I'm sure you can put it in the comments to confirm or to have that conversation. So I remember 5-star general, like the highest level, the most promises that I would get from the seller. 5-star general, 5 promises that I'm getting from the seller. The next type of a deed is special. Anytime I hear special, I'm going to bring in what you do every single time. Let's say you go to the store and you see there's a special, there's a sale, you get 2. So here I'm looking at special, buy one, get one free. It's a sale. And therefore, how I remember this in terms of buy one, get one free, I'm getting 2, right? So I'm getting 2 promises from the seller. Seller is saying, I own this property and I have every right to sell it to you. That's promise number 1. Promise number 2, as long as I have owned it, if it's 10 years, 10 months, 10 weeks, 10 years, doesn't matter. As long as I have owned it, then I am sure there are no encumbrances that will limit you from you refinancing or selling it in the future. So this one is limited only to the time that the seller owned it. General, remember, warranty forever. It goes on forever. It doesn't matter whether it's you, how long you owned it, it's forever. Special is only limited for a certain period of time. So some of us might still be enjoying the sales that are going on right now during this period of this recording. Maybe there's some Easter sales that are coming up. You're going to be taking advantage of the next holidays coming up, Memorial, July 4th, etc. Those ones are usually limited. So buy one, get one free, and a sale. 2 promises that you get from the seller. The other type of a deed is going to be a bargain and sale. And this is where I look at the initials, because you are getting kind of one implied. Implied is stressed upon because this one is as is. Whatever you get, that's what you get. Whatever you see and buy, that's what you get. And it's not about the condition. Yes, it could be about the condition. It's about you cannot go back to the person that sold it to you and say, wait a minute, there's some encumbrances that you did not tell me about. That's not the case with this one. That's why it's a BS, bargain and sale. For example, if you don't pay your property taxes, the government takes the property, and when they're selling it, they're only focused about what? Getting their money back based on the tax bill that was not paid. They're not going to worry about whether there are any tickets or notices because the grass was too long or there was trash. They don't care whether there was a mortgage, for example. They don't care whether the person didn't pay whomever, a contractor. Those are not eliminated when you don't pay your property taxes and the jurisdiction goes ahead and does a foreclosure. So that's the example that I have for you on this one. It's implied warranty. Why? Because the government took the property, the person didn't pay property taxes, and the government has now the right to sell it to you, but the government is not going to eliminate all the other things that were attached to the property in the example of a tax foreclosure. The last one, quit claim. Quit, you quit your job, you're saying goodbye, so you're no longer responsible. So this one has no promises. There are no warranties whatsoever. This one is used to cure cloud on title. There's a frequency of, or rather, there's a time frame of years when we can't really tell who owned the property because either the title company made a mistake or something came up. So now we're fixing that gap. It's almost like a Band-Aid or bandage that you're gapping two things or you're gluing together. That's a quit claim deed. The examples that I have for you is, for example, when an individual or individuals are going through a divorce or inheritance. This is the one that might be used. Or when somebody says, I don't want to be on the deed anymore, and now they're refinancing and taking out the other person. So quit claim is, again, no promises whatsoever. There's no coverage whatsoever to that individual that is getting it. This is where we conclude that topic. Thank you again for your patience to continue this conversation. The first Tuesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, we do have an exam prep session that gets you ready for the exam, 90 minutes. And then we dig deeper into specific topics on our exam prep topics. We usually have them on the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern and the third Saturday at 4:30 Eastern as well. You will be able to get a list and register for these sessions by going to trainingwithbrenda.com or brendakasuva.com. If you have your phone out, go ahead and scan the QR code for you to be able to connect with us on our website, brendakasuva.com. Until next time, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and join us on our Facebook group. Schedule your exam, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and subscribe for you to get notifications for our future videos. We want you to be successful in passing your real estate exam. Go ahead and check out the exam handbook or bulletin that breaks it down for you, the questions you can expect on your real estate exam. If you don't have access to that, we do have a link to a video that walks you through that in the description. Take advantage of the comments for us to respond to any of your questions. Lastly, schedule for your exam today. If you need assistance to pass the exam, we welcome for you to schedule a tutor session or attend our group coaching sessions that we offer on a regular basis. Until next time, go ahead and schedule your exam right away, and good luck.